I have spoken to doctors, nurses, many women who've given birth to children, and all of them say the same thing. Those photographs of Meghan and the way the baby bump performed are totally unexpected, and they're not aware of any baby, any pregnant woman who is genuinely pregnant having her bump perform the way Meghan's has performed.
Something major is stirring behind palace walls, and this time it's not staying quiet. Lady C has stepped forward with shocking new claims tied to an investigation involving Archie and Lilibet, and Meghan's reaction is already turning heads. What exactly has been uncovered, and why is it hitting so hard right now? Insiders are hinting this situation runs way deeper than anyone expected. Questions are being raised that could completely flip how everything is seen going forward. Lady C isn't tiptoeing around it either. She's laying out details that have people buzzing non-stop, and the tension building around Meghan's response is only cranking the heat up higher. Is this a misunderstanding getting blown out of proportion, or is something much bigger playing out behind closed doors? The timing, the statements, and the emotional reactions are all lining up in a way that's hard to brush off. Every new detail that surfaces feels more jaw-dropping than the one before it. Now, fresh doubts are swirling around Princess Lilibet's birth certificate, and they're raising serious eyebrows. The spotlight is on whether the details made public actually match official records, and people are starting to question just how accurate everything really is.
New question marks over the veracity of Princess Lilibet's birth certificate, and it also raises serious concerns about whether Meghan Markle has been honest with the public about her daughter's birth.
A royal-focused content creator recently flagged a specific number on the document, pointing out that the first 3 digits are supposed to represent the birth location code, the code that links directly to the state where the child was born. Here's where it gets messy. The number shown for Lilibet starts with 105, but according to publicly available government data, California's assigned code is 104. That one-digit mismatch is what's fueling the entire controversy. If the location code doesn't line up with California, people are asking, what does it actually mean? And more importantly, how did that number end up on such a critical document? With Archie and Lilibet holding places in the royal line of succession, this detail suddenly carries a lot more weight. Critics are now pointing to multiple inconsistencies in the paperwork, suggesting that something simply doesn't add up. Sure, a simple administrative error is still possible, but even that explanation is being heavily picked apart right now. Here's where things get even more surprising. The birth location tied to that code may not be California at all. The number 105 is being linked to Colorado, and if that's accurate, it directly clashes with the widely shared story of Lilibet being born in Santa Barbara. That's where the confusion really kicks in.
This is directly from the government's website, guys. And this is reviewing a birth certificate birth area code. Okay? And then it tells you what it is. It's the first 3 digits. You remember the 105 that you saw? Is the birth area code. It tells you in which state the child was born. We have seen that in Lilibet's birth certificate. It states that her number is 105. So surely that is California, right? It turns out that California is 104. And let's not forget that Archie is 6th in line to the throne, and Lilibet is 7th in line to the throne, which is insane.
Meghan and Harry had already laid out a clear timeline, naming the hospital and sharing personal details about the day. At the time, it all felt solid. But now those same details are being held up against the document codes being discussed, and people are not letting it slide. More details keep stacking up too. The medical professional connected to the birth reportedly stepped away from her practice shortly after, and that move has sparked serious curiosity, adding yet another layer to an already complicated story. Taken together, these points are leaving observers feeling like there are too many gaps to just look away from. Because Archie and Lilibet are part of the royal line of succession, the bar for transparency is set much higher. Royal births are typically backed by clear, consistent records with zero room for confusion. That's exactly why this situation is pulling in so much attention, with people pushing hard for straight answers. Now the conversation takes an even sharper turn, focusing on what some are calling a glaring gap. The claim that there is no publicly verified proof for the births of Archie and Lilibet, especially compared to other royal children, is enough on its own to ignite fierce debate.
Even if you put the questions of whether Meghan actually bore these children to one side, Harry has now admitted on the record that he will not allow them ever to come to the United Kingdom. Well, some royal families would not allow young princes or princesses to be in the line of succession if they were not educated in the country of which one day they might serve.
The argument being pushed here is about public interest. Since these children are part of the royal line of succession, people across the UK and Commonwealth nations believe they have a real stake in knowing that everything has been handled properly and transparently. That expectation of clarity is exactly what's keeping these questions alive. At the center of it all are two very different takes being thrown around. One side says the whole situation has simply been drowning in confusion and mixed signals, creating doubt where there shouldn't be any. The other side raises more serious concerns about whether key details have ever been fully explained, though these claims remain unverified and heavily disputed. What really keeps this fire burning is the sheer volume of voices jumping in. Medical professionals, parents, and everyday people have all weighed in based on their own experiences, piling even more perspectives onto an already complicated situation. With so many conflicting interpretations floating around, the uncertainty keeps growing, and the calls for clear answers are only getting louder. The conversation then shifts to visuals that have already caused a stir online. Some critics point to past photos and claim the pregnancy appearance didn't look consistent, arguing it raised red flags for them. These opinions are spreading fast, even though they remain highly disputed and backed by zero confirmed evidence.
All other royal babies in the line of succession have had their births signed off. Princess Eugenie, Princess Beatrice, Sarah York, Diana Wales, Catherine Wales, you name it. Everybody knows where the babies came from, at what time, with proof. The only two children that there is no proof for is Prince Archie Bunker and Princess Lily. You better hope that she's really entitled to what they claim she's entitled to.
From there, attention snaps straight to the royal line of succession, and this is where things get really intense. Official listings still place Prince Harry, Archie, and Lilibet in their positions, clearly shown on the royal family's own records. That's what makes this whole situation feel so unresolved. Despite all the noise and speculation, nothing has officially changed. There's also chatter about how different royals are handling this internally. King Charles is said to prefer keeping tensions from escalating, while Prince William, as the future king, could take a much firmer stance if pushed. That contrast alone is sparking serious curiosity about what move comes next. And then there's another layer entirely: the children's connection to the UK itself. Some are now questioning whether being raised outside the country could eventually affect expectations tied to royal roles. That idea has triggered calls for a broader public conversation, touching on tradition, identity, and just how far royal institutions can stretch before something has to give. The discussion then blows wide open, moving far beyond the royal family and into something much bigger and way more sensitive. The concern being raised is that opening up a public debate about the line of succession could spiral out of control faster than anyone expects. Once questions like this go public,
the hair color on these children keeps changing. There's one picture where this alleged Lilibet has sort of a sandy blonde hair from a distance. And then she's got bright, stark red curly hair. We don't know if, the Sussex Squad and PR have photoshopped some of it. But the bottom line for me is that there is no consistent reference, no real point of reference for the faces of these alleged children. We have no idea what they look like, if they have Markle genetics, we don't know what they look like.
They don't stay contained for long. Instead of a clean conversation, the fear is that it could trigger fierce disagreements, with different voices rushing in and pushing their own agendas, not just about succession, but about the monarchy itself. That kind of chain reaction is being described as genuinely risky, especially at a time when opinions are already deeply divided and emotions are running hot. Another key point being raised is just how complicated the system really is. Unlike some other monarchies, decisions in the UK aren't made with a single move. Because the king also serves as head of state across multiple countries, any significant change would pull in far more than just one nation. That makes the whole situation way more tangled than it looks on the surface. At the same time, there's a clear recognition that not everyone even wants this debate happening. Some believe pushing the issue only stirs up unnecessary tension, while others argue that transparency matters more than comfort. That split in opinion shows exactly how delicate this topic is and why it keeps triggering such fierce reactions. Then comes the public opinion angle, and the numbers are telling their own story. Recent polling suggests the royal family still holds strong support overall, while Harry and Meghan are sitting at much lower approval ratings. That gap is only adding more heat to an already intense discussion. But then things take an even more serious turn. Growing concern is emerging around what could unfold in an extreme or unexpected situation.
The voice, did you sense Markle at all in the voice?
No. I haven't sensed Markle at all from the beginning of this. And again, I think any family, when you're looking at genealogy and you're looking at photographs and you're thinking, oh, well, she's got his nose or her nose, and oh my God, there's grandpa's nose. We haven't seen any photographs to use as identifying point of references for family genetic traits. So we're left thinking, okay, are these stand-ins? Do they not want the real children seen? What's the deal? But we cannot say that these are Markle children.
Royal travel protocols exist for a reason, with long-standing warnings about senior family members not traveling together to protect the line of succession. Those precautions have been quietly discussed for years, and now they're being pulled back into the spotlight. The concern itself is simple, but the implications are striking. If something unforeseen were to happen, it could create a situation the public might simply refuse to accept. That possibility, while unlikely, is still being thrown into the bigger conversation about the monarchy's future and what it all means long-term. At the same time, others are pushing back hard on how realistic that scenario actually is. They argue the chances of such an outcome are extremely low, and that the system is far more stable than dramatic conversations like this make it seem. But here's the thing, the fact that these ideas are being discussed at all says everything about the level of scrutiny the royal family is constantly living under. The discussion then circles back to royal travel and the real risks tied to it. A past example involving Princess Diana gets brought up. She insisted on traveling with her child, despite early concerns raised at the time. That decision has now been folded into a wider conversation about just how seriously these safety protocols should be taken today. Attention then shifts to Prince William, with claims that he continues to travel with his family, despite long-standing guidance designed to protect the line of succession.
Unexpected situation.
Is she purposefully now trying to take on the royal family?
Yes, I think this is one of her things where she says, look, I can do anything much better than you. And the Queen is now no longer here. She realises it's such a good time because King Charles won't get involved with that because he's not well and he's got plenty to do. And William and Catherine, they've got their own issues and problems and very busy, and their children. So she's just done it and is probably roaring with laughter how clever it is.
While he's known to be experienced and confident, Critics argue that even the most skilled individuals can't control every variable, especially unexpected mechanical failures. Real-world incidents are brought in to drive the point home. Aircraft accidents, though rare, do happen and in some cases have been traced back to technical failures rather than human error. That reality is now being used to question whether enough caution is being exercised at the very highest level. All of this feeds into a much bigger concern whether the line of succession should be more openly discussed and formally reviewed. But there's clear hesitation too, because cracking that door open could trigger debates about multiple royal figures and unleash even more controversy. Just as the conversation reaches that point, it takes another sharp turn. A new claim surfaces suggesting that personal details included in Prince Harry's memoir may have been added with a very specific strategy in mind, potentially playing a role in future legal situations. This remains unconfirmed and is based on reported sources only, not verified facts. And just like that, the conversation leans into yet another highly controversial claim, one being described as coming straight from a trusted but unnamed source. The suggestion is that certain personal details may have been included in Prince Harry's memoir for very strategic reasons, possibly with future legal situations already in mind. It's an eye-catching idea, but it's critical to point out that this remains completely unverified and rooted in speculation. From there, the tone gets even sharper. Meghan is being described by some commentators as highly calculated and laser-focused, with claims that she approaches every major decision in an extremely deliberate way. These opinions are being backed up by references to past professional connections and media reports, all painting a picture of someone who always has a next move carefully planned out. There are also claims about how relationships and dynamics within Harry's life may have shifted significantly over time.
It's not just making a mockery of the royal family. They're making a mockery of the United States Constitution.
Correct.
That prohibits the use of royal titles, especially in American politics. And Harry and Meghan, can't be ignorant to this fact. They've used the titles against congressional advisement on continuum, preceding public, even political speeches. So they simply can't do it. It creates a false sense of elevated status and reliance that the public have.
Critics argue that certain changes have distanced him from previous connections, though these points remain heavily debated and far from universally accepted. Another detail keeps feeding the conversation, a reported media claim about potential future projects tied to a possible separation. What's catching attention is that there has been no public legal response or denial to that report. Some are reading that silence as meaningful, while others warn it doesn't confirm a single thing on its own. All of this builds a narrative packed with strong opinions but very few confirmed facts, keeping the speculation alive and the debate raging on with no signs of cooling down. Then comes another major talking point straight from recent media coverage, and it's hitting hard. A high-profile publication dropped an analysis piece on the royal family divide, but critics are already calling it one-sided and seriously outdated, especially in how it portrays King Charles and Prince William.
Every photograph we've seen of the alleged children, their hair color changes, their height and body type changes, their face changes. So this is just, some random voice. All we saw was some little hand that seemed so small, it didn't seem like it belonged to a 3-year-old. So much was inconsistent about this that, I just think it's a kind of a turnoff. I'm not buying.
One of the biggest flashpoints is a label attached to Prince William that many say no longer reflects his current role or the work he's actually putting in. That detail alone has ignited real frustration, with people arguing it completely ignores how much Prince William's responsibilities have grown and evolved in recent years. The coverage also floats the idea that King Charles's legacy could take a serious hit if family relationships aren't repaired, and that claim has raised plenty of eyebrows, with commentators pushing back hard and questioning why the situation is being framed in such loaded terms. Another layer getting pulled into this this is the connection between media access and influence. It's being pointed out that certain outlets may have much closer ties to some royal figures than others, and that relationship can absolutely shape the tone and direction of their coverage. Events, interviews, and exclusive access all play into that dynamic in a big way. Because of this, some believe there are underlying incentives at work, whether that's audience interest, business opportunities, or editorial positioning, quietly steering how these stories get packaged and presented. Others argue it's simply how modern media operates, leaving that debate wide open. But the criticism toward that media coverage doesn't stop there, it actually gets sharper. Some commentators are openly questioning the credibility of the outlet itself, arguing that the way the story was framed reveals clear bias rather than anything close to balanced reporting. That frustration is boiling over.
Meghan Markle's daughter doesn't speak at all like a 3-year-old. Who owns the voice? It will show up much better if we hear several sentences, and then you hear Meghan in this interview saying, "Beautiful." I mean, what's going on?
Well, I think she's always wanted to show that the children are much cleverer than they are for their age. You know, they might be very clever, but all sorts of things that Archie, I think, is going fishing and catches fish, all sorts of strange things that they manage to do all by themselves because they're their children.
Especially among those who feel the narrative is being deliberately pushed in one very specific direction. Another flashpoint is the commentary chosen for the piece. A former royal correspondent was quoted, suggesting that King Charles's legacy would ultimately be judged by his ability to hold the family together. Sounds simple enough, but critics argue it dangerously oversimplifies a far more complex situation and dumps responsibility on one side while completely ignoring the bigger picture. There's also fierce pushback against how blame is being handed out overall. Voices in this discussion are insisting that the tensions within the royal family didn't just appear out of thin air, and that years of public criticism and carefully orchestrated media appearances have played a massive role in getting things to where they stand today. At the heart of it all is a much bigger disagreement about accountability and perception. Who is actually responsible for repairing these relationships? How much should public image drive private decisions? And is the media giving the full picture, or just the version that pulls the most clicks? Those questions are keeping this debate loud, divided, and nowhere near settled. The focus then shifts to King Charles's long-term impact, and this is where a strong defense comes charging in. Supporters point to his decades of work through the Prince's Trust, now known as the King's Trust, highlighting the very real difference it has made for young people across the UK and the Commonwealth. The argument is straightforward but powerful. Thousands of young people have been handed real opportunities, genuine support, and clear direction through these programs, with many going on to build successful careers and stable lives.
Meghan is commercialising her kids, she's pimping out her children. You're Prince Harry's biographer. We both know there's no way he's happy about it. No way. He talks about social media being like a death zone for children, yet here are his children all the time being put up on social media by Meghan.
She doesn't obviously care what Harry thinks because he doesn't want this. One of the main things in his life is not to have children that can be seen by people because he feels something could happen like happened, God forbid, to his mother.
Some have even become well-known public figures, while countless others have quietly benefited in ways that matter just as much. That kind of impact doesn't just disappear because of a few negative headlines, and supporters are making sure that point lands loud and clear. Because of that, critics of the earlier media coverage say it's missing a massive piece of the puzzle. Zeroing in on family tensions while completely glossing over years of dedicated charitable work creates a narrative that feels hollow, rushed, and dangerously one-sided. People are starting to call that out, and the pushback is getting harder to ignore. There's also a growing belief that certain media outlets lean into royal connections purely for visibility and audience interest, especially when direct access to senior figures is limited. That dynamic, according to voices in this discussion, could be quietly shaping which angles get pushed hardest and which ones get completely buried. When access drives the story stops being about truth and starts being about opportunity. And that raises a question worth sitting with. If the coverage is being shaped by who has the best media relationships rather than who has the most accurate information, then how much of what's being reported can actually be trusted? That uncomfortable question is sitting at the center of this whole conversation, and not enough people are asking it out loud. All of this keeps pulling everything back to one central truth. Legacy isn't built on a single storyline, and there is far more to weigh when looking at the full picture.
Meghan is gradually showing more and more of them, and I don't think she cares whether what he feels or what he doesn't feel. The other thing, of course, is to not do what she's doing, which is advertising herself, because he thinks it's very, very bad for everyone, but she wants to do it for herself, and never mind the children. When Harry was asked about what he feels now about children with social media, he said, "Oh, mine are too young to do anything about that yet," which was just passing the question.
One headline, one analysis piece, or one unnamed source does not define decades of work, service, or sacrifice. And yet, in today's media landscape, a single story can travel faster than the truth ever could. That's exactly what makes this whole situation so complicated. On one side, you have real concerns being raised about transparency, official records, and what the public deserves to know. On the other side, you have a media machine that critics say is more focused on drama than accuracy picking, and choosing details that serve a specific angle while leaving out everything that doesn't fit the frame. As this story keeps unfolding, one thing is crystal clear. There are still mountains of questions, oceans of opinions, and nowhere near enough straight answers. From the debates over official records to the sweeping conversation about the monarchy's future, people on every side are watching this very closely, and the pressure for real, verified answers is only building. What makes this even more gripping is how fast new claims and reactions keep surfacing. Just when things seem like they might cool down, another detail drops and drags everyone right back in. Another source, another contradiction, another layer that raises even more questions than the one before it. This story has a way of refusing to sit still, and that alone tells you something important. With so much at stake, royal succession, public trust, media credibility, and family legacy all tangled up together, it's no surprise this conversation keeps growing instead of shrinking. Every new development adds another thread to an already complicated web, and people are paying attention in a way that's impossible to dismiss. The bigger picture here goes way beyond palace gossip or tabloid noise. This is about institutions, transparency, and whether the systems people have trusted for generations are actually holding up the way they're supposed to. Those are serious questions, and serious questions deserve serious, honest answers, not carefully managed silence. At the same time, it's worth remembering that not everything being discussed has been confirmed. Claims are flying from every direction, and not all of them carry the same weight. Separating what's verified from what's speculation is harder than ever right now, and that's part of what makes this moment so intense and so important to keep watching closely. Because when the dust eventually settles, what's left standing will matter. Whether that's a clearer record, a repaired relationship, a challenged narrative, or something nobody has even predicted yet, the outcome of all this noise will have real consequences for real people and real institutions. Now it's your turn to sound off. Do you think these concerns are being blown way out of proportion, or is there something here that genuinely deserves a much closer look? Do you believe the media is playing it straight, or is there an agenda quietly steering the whole conversation? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now, because the discussion happening down there is just as important as everything covered here, and every perspective adds something real to this conversation. If this breakdown had you hooked from start to finish, smash that like button and let the algorithm know this kind of content matters. Hit subscribe so you never miss a single update, because this story is still moving and new developments could drop at any moment. And if you know someone who's been following all of this closely, share this video with them right now and get their reaction, because this is exactly the kind of story that needs more eyes on it. Your support keeps these conversations alive, keeps the research going, and makes sure the angles that matter don't get swept under the rug. See you in the next one, because trust, there is always a next one, and it just might be even bigger than this.